I stood outside the hotel ballroom, heart pounding, palms sweating. Inside, I could already hear the clinking of glasses, the music, the laughter. It was my sister Deborah's big night. The banners with her company's name were everywhere. Guests were taking pictures under them like it was a movie premiere. But no one expected me to be here. Not my parents, not Deborah, and definitely not the cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years. They thought I had disappeared into nothing after I walked away from the family business and started cleaning houses for a living. I took a deep breath and stepped through the marble doors. No one noticed me at first. My parents were at the bar, looking polished and proud, like always. Deborah stood near the stage in her designer dress, surrounded by people laughing at her jokes. She looked like everything I used to want to be. But I wasn't here to blend in tonight. I was here because the success they thought I never had, was the reason this event existed in the first place. Let me take you back. Growing up in the Jess household wasn't about love. It was about image. My dad, Mr. Jess, was a strict banker. He ironed his shirt sleeves with military precision and believed feelings were distractions. My mom smiled a lot in public, but at home, silence was golden and shame was hidden under perfect table settings. Deborah, she was their dream child. Got straight A's, spoke like a TV anchor, wore pearls by 17. And me, I was the messy one. The one who questioned rules. I didn't want their planned out life. I wanted to build something new. I studied computer science and design when they begged me to do finance. I took jobs at tiny startups instead of applying to big banks. They thought I was wasting my time. At 27, I launched my first tech startup. I poured everything into it. I slept in the office. I cleaned bathrooms to save money on overhead. I believed in what I was building. By 30, it failed. Not in flames. Quietly, slowly, I watched money vanish. Investors disappeared. My phone stopped ringing. Even my parents didn't call. One night, the day after my business folded, Deborah sent me a message. Come to dinner. Don't be dramatic. At that dinner, she smiled across the table and said, not everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur. Maybe now you can join Dad's firm like we planned. Like we planned. That night, I realized they had never seen me. So I left. I became a cleaner. Not because I had no options. But because I needed silence. I needed space. I cleaned offices at night, rich people's homes during the day. I kept my head down and listened to what people said when they thought no one important was around. That's how I met Theo Hood. He was one of the few who saw me. You're smart, he said after I fixed a bug on his laptop while cleaning his office. Why are you doing this job? I'm building something, I replied. Just quietly this time. He smiled. Then let me help. Together, we built a new kind of company. One that valued people others ignored. We helped small businesses track customer behavior using tools big companies overlooked. No investors. No flashy parties. Just results. 5 years later, my company became the silent engine behind multiple data systems, including Deborah's. She didn't know. Not yet. But the gala tonight, it was sponsored by my company's donation, made anonymously until now. Back in the ballroom, the CEO of the nonprofit stepped onto the stage. We want to thank our biggest donor tonight, he said. Someone who believed in our mission when no one else did. Please welcome Savannah Jess. The room froze. Deborah blinked like she'd seen a ghost. My parents slowly turned. I walked to the stage. No glittering dress. No designer shoes. Just a simple black suit. Clean, sharp, powerful. As the spotlight hit me, I didn't smile for applause. I smiled because for the first time, they saw me. And I didn't need their approval anymore. If you've ever been the black sheep, the overlooked one, or the person counted out, remember, your story isn't over. Sometimes, success grows in silence. And when it finally speaks, it roars. Subscribe for more powerful stories that prove being underestimated is your greatest strength. Was printed right there on the front. Ms. Savannah Jess, Executive Benefactor. I stared at it for a long time. My coffee went cold beside me. My phone buzzed with an unread message from Theo Hood, but I didn't look at it. My hands were shaking. After years of silence, strategic silence, they had unknowingly invited me to the very stage I'd helped build. I remember calling Theo that night. He picked up on the first ring. "You got it too?" he asked. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "They have no idea, Theo. They're about to," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. The days leading up to the gala were strange. I was torn between panic and peace. Part of me still feared being seen by them. Not the crowd, not the press, them, my parents, Deborah. But another part of me, the part that had scraped floors, coated platforms on zero sleep, and taken client calls in janitor closets, she was ready. The night before the gala, I sat on the edge of my bed holding a dress I hadn't worn since I gave my first TED Talk in London. Simple, sharp, black silk with a square neckline and a back zip that felt like armor. I tried it on, then turned to Theo who was working on his laptop across the room. "How do I look?" I asked. He glanced up and smiled, slow and sure. Like the woman they tried to forget. Now here I was, standing under the soft golden lights of the ballroom, the spotlight still warm on my shoulders as people stared, whispering. I stepped down from the stage and the crowd parted for me like water. Deborah met me halfway. Her expression was unreadable. "Savannah." I nodded. "Yes. You're the donor." "I am." She blinked, trying to connect dots that had been invisible for too long. "But how? I mean, when?" "While you were being interviewed for Forbes," I said gently. I was rebuilding in silence. She swallowed hard. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you never asked." There was no cruelty in my voice. Just truth. And that was somehow harder for her to absorb. Behind her, I saw my parents. My mother was whispering to someone, her eyes fixed on me like I was a glitch in the program. My father. He was standing stiffly, arms crossed, lips tight. I could almost hear his thoughts. "This doesn't make sense." She was done. She failed. But I hadn't failed. I had simply walked away from their path and built my own. Deborah leaned in closer, her voice softer now. "Did you know I worked for your company?" I smiled. "I still do." That conversation ended when the next speaker took the stage, but Deborah kept glancing at me throughout the evening. Not with hatred or anger, but with confusion. Like she was looking at a stranger she used to live with. Later, as people sipped champagne and networked under crystal chandeliers, I stepped out to the balcony. Theo followed, hands in his pockets. "How are you holding up?" I exhaled. "Like I'm finally breathing." He stood beside me, his voice lower now. "You know they're going to try to rewrite the story, right?" "I know," I said. "But I'm not here to fight. I'm here to keep building." He nodded, and we stood in silence, the city lights blinking in the distance. But I could feel it, something was coming. Not just recognition, not just respect, something deeper, something that would force my family to confront not just who I'd become, but who they never bothered to know in the first place. And this time, I wasn't hiding. Public image with impressive precision. She turned Evolve Insight from a quiet little analytics startup into something sleek and bold. New logos, new pitch decks, TED-style press interviews. Suddenly they weren't just solving problems, they were reshaping how businesses understand people. And Deborah, formerly the pearl-wearing, PR-ready daughter, was now being praised as a visionary. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, laptop open, watching one of her LinkedIn live sessions. She stood on a bright stage in a coral suit, talking confidently about turnaround culture and resilience under pressure. I almost laughed. She didn't know she was talking about me. She had no idea that the funding she bragged about securing had come through because I believed in the team she barely acknowledged. That her job existed because I kept the company afloat before her name was even on the payroll. I could have exposed everything, but I didn't, because it was never about revenge. I wasn't building Langford Meridian Ventures to prove anything to my family. I was building because I loved solving hard problems, seeing good people win, helping things grow in silence. Still, something changed when that gala invitation came. The envelope hadn't even listed my name. Just +1 under my parents. A courtesy. A background character. I RSVP'd anyway. Not to show off. Not to confront them. But because it felt like a full circle moment. Like I had arrived at a story they thought they were telling, only now, the ending wasn't in their hands. That night, as I walked past the velvet ropes, the security guard glanced at the guest list and then looked at me. "Your name?" he asked. "Savannah Jess. I'm with Langford Meridian Ventures." His eyes widened slightly. "You're the keynote funder." I nodded. He lifted the rope. And just like that, the doors opened. Inside, everything sparkled. Chandeliers glinted off glasses of champagne. The soft jazz of a live quartet danced beneath the buzz of polite conversations. I slipped in quietly, like I always had. Just another woman in a black dress, heels clicking softly against marble floors. But this time, I wasn't invisible. The event coordinator greeted me with a wide smile. "We're so honored to have you, Ms. Jess. The CEO is excited to meet you in person." "Thank you," I said. "I'm just glad to be here." I meant that. Because for once, I wasn't trying to prove myself. I was just showing up as who I'd become. I saw Deborah before she saw me. She was in her element, surrounded by Evolve Insights board members, laughing as she gestured toward a monitor looping their promo video. My father stood nearby, chatting with one of the sponsors. My mother was already 3 conversations deep in her perfect pearls and tailored blazer. Then Deborah turned, and her eyes landed on me. She blinked, paused, then smiled, that tight PR smile she'd perfected since we were teenagers. "Savannah," she said, stepping toward me. "I didn't know you were coming." "I was invited," I replied gently. "As Dad's +1. I tilted my head. "No, as the keynote donor." Her face shifted. The smile flickered. "Wait, Langford Meridian Ventures. That's you." I nodded, surprised. She didn't answer right away. Then, a little. There was no malice in her voice. Just confusion. The kind that comes when a ghost suddenly takes shape and speaks. "How long have you?" "Since before you joined," I said. "Since your second round nearly collapsed." She looked around, suddenly self-conscious. "Why didn't you say anything?" I let the silence stretch. "Because you didn't ask." And, just like that, the air between us thickened. Not with anger, not even with regret, with recognition. For the first time in years, I saw her truly see me, not as the sister who failed, or the cleaner who disappeared, but as the one who held up the roof when she didn't even know it was caving in. Glided between round tables dressed in white linen. Soft jazz floated from the stage. The air smelled like orchids and old money. I stood by a tall glass window near the entrance, alone, sipping water from a crystal flute. I watched the room fill, industry giants, old money types, ambitious founders, and polished influencers with tight smiles and even tighter dresses. And then my parents walked in. My mother in her cream suit, pearls shining like they had a purpose. My father beside her, scanning the crowd like he was inspecting a boardroom. They hadn't seen me yet. Deborah arrived a few minutes later, surrounded by her team. She looked beautiful, confident, collected, wearing a soft rose-colored gown that caught the light every time she moved. She greeted people with hugs and cheek kisses, holding a glass of champagne like she was born to do it. I felt no resentment, just a strange stillness, like I was standing on both sides of a memory at once. Theo found me in the corner just as the ceremony was starting. "You good?" he asked, brushing a speck of lint off his blazer. "I'm fine," I said. "Liar," he smirked, then leaned closer. "But a good one." We both laughed quietly, and I let myself breathe for a moment. The host stepped up to the mic at the center of the stage, her voice cheerful and smooth. She welcomed everyone, thanked the usual names, ran through highlights of Evolve's journey, and then paused. "And tonight," she said, "we want to honor a contributor whose support came not through the front door, but through the foundation, someone who gave not for credit, but for belief. Without their quiet faith and critical resources, we would not be standing here tonight." I could feel the air in the room change. Deborah leaned forward at her table, brows furrowed. My mother sat up straighter. I lowered my glass. The host smiled. "Please join me in recognizing Langford Meridian Ventures, founded and led by Ms. Savannah Jess." The room gasped. Literally gasped. A soft, stunned ripple of sound spread like spilled wine. Theo touched my back lightly. "It's time." I stepped forward. As I walked up the stage, my heels soft against the carpet, I didn't look at Deborah. I didn't look at my parents. I looked at the spotlight. And I stepped into it. The host handed me a glass award with my name engraved in delicate cursive. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. But when I turned to face the crowd, I saw Deborah. She was still frozen in her seat, mouth slightly open, champagne glass now resting forgotten on the table. Our eyes met. Something in her face cracked, not jealousy, not anger, something quieter. Maybe realization, maybe regret. After the ceremony, I walked back toward the hallway near the coat check to find some air. I didn't want congratulations. I didn't need applause. I just wanted to breathe. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Savannah. I turned. Deborah stood there alone. She looked smaller without her entourage. Her shoulders sloped, like she wasn't sure how to hold herself anymore. I didn't know, she said, voice low. I know. You were, all this time. Helping. I finished. Yes. She looked down, then back up. Why didn't you tell me? I shrugged. You never asked. She was quiet for a long time. I would have listened, she whispered. I tilted my head. Would you have believed me? She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer. Did Mom and Dad know? No. They still think I work night shifts cleaning buildings. A flicker of a smile tugged at her mouth. Do you? I smiled back. Sometimes. When I miss the silence. She laughed softly, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like we were two girls again. Just sisters. Not rivals. Not disappointments. Just two very different women who had finally come face to face with the truth between them. Someone who no longer needed permission to be seen. Each step felt like closure. Not for them, for me. The girl who used to practice dinner speeches in her room, hoping to be asked her opinion at the table. The cleaner who'd scrubbed marble floors while imagining business plans in her head. The woman who, in silence, funded their success while they told everyone she had disappeared. Now, I was walking into the light. Theo stood just off stage, arms folded, watching me with a quiet kind of pride. I didn't need him to say anything. His presence had been steady through all of it, through every late-night strategy call, through the rejection letters, through the cleanups after closed doors. Jalen, Theo, smiled and extended the award toward me, a simple glass sculpture engraved with my name. Savannah Jess, Langford Meridian Ventures. Not Verity, not Clarissa's older sister. Just me. I accepted it and turned toward the audience, standing still for a beat. The crowd gave polite applause. But some were staring, whispering, doing mental math, piecing things together. My mother's hands were folded tightly in her lap, fingers white around the knuckles. My father wore the same stern look he used to give me after every incomplete in math class. And Deborah, she looked like her chest couldn't quite catch up with her breath. I saw it in her eyes. Not jealousy, but recognition. She hadn't just overlooked me. She'd built her image on a foundation I laid, and never once thought to ask who held the hammer. I didn't give a speech. I didn't need to. Jalen nodded as I stepped off the stage, and a waiter offered me champagne. I waved it off and made my way toward the back of the room again. I just wanted air. I slipped into the hallway, leaned against a pillar near the staircase, and exhaled. That's when I heard my father's voice. Savannah. It was sharp. Not angry. Just clipped, like he was trying to sound controlled. I turned around slowly. Both of them, my parents, stood there. My mother looked like she'd aged 5 years in 5 minutes. I thought, she started, eyes scanning my face like I was some stranger trying to wear their daughter's features. My father cut in. You could have told us. I raised an eyebrow. Would you have listened? Silence. We thought you were cleaning buildings, my mother whispered. I was, I said. And building empires at the same time. My father frowned. Langford Meridian Ventures. That's yours. All mine, I said. Though you probably know it better is the reason Deborah still has a job. He flinched. She blinked. My mother looked down, then back up. Why the secrecy? I tilted my head. Because you didn't respect anything you couldn't measure with a title or a LinkedIn post. I learned to stop offering explanations. For a moment, no one said anything. Then my mother whispered, we were just trying to protect you. No, I said. You were protecting your pride. Not me. I didn't say it with hate. Just clarity. I'm not angry, I added. I'm free. That's the difference. And I walked away, had turned from confusion to worry. My father stood beside her, arms crossed tightly, eyes locked on us like we were figures in a courtroom. But I didn't look away from Deborah. She sat there blinking, lips parted, hands folded too neatly in her lap like she was still trying to hold on to something, an image, maybe, a role, a script she'd rehearsed one too many times. Her voice dropped, barely a whisper. I didn't know. I know. I thought. She paused. I thought you were struggling. That you gave up. I did struggle. And I did give up, on seeking your approval. Her jaw tensed. I didn't mean to. I know, I said again, quietly. But you did. There was something devastating about the way her eyes softened just then. The sharpness faded, and she looked younger. Almost like the Deborah I used to share secrets with at night when our parents fought behind closed doors. Before she became the version of herself they molded into a trophy. She bit her lip and whispered, "Did you hate me?" I didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, "No. I just stopped needing you to see me. That was the only way I could grow." She nodded like she understood, but maybe not fully. Maybe not yet. We sat in silence for a moment, the quiet between us more honest than any conversation we'd had in years. Then her voice came again, hesitant. "What happens now?" I turned slightly, watching the soft lights bounce off the ballroom chandeliers. The music had started up again. The rhythm was slow, dignified, trying to re-establish control in a room that had just lost its center. "That depends on you," I said. She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I'm not asking for credit, Deborah. I don't need it. But don't erase me again. That's all." She looked down. Her fingers tugged at the hem of her gown like a child unraveling the edge of a comfort blanket. "I didn't know how far you'd gone," she said. "How much you did." I smiled faintly. "That's because you didn't look." From the corner of my eye, I saw Theo approaching. He didn't interrupt, just stood a few feet away, watching me the way he always had. With patience. With quiet belief. Deborah followed my gaze and her brow furrowed. "Is that him? The guy from your team?" I turned back to her, a little amused. "That's the man who helped me build everything." She nodded slowly. "I didn't even know you had a team. Because you didn't ask." Deborah stood up, adjusted her gown again. I could tell she didn't want to leave it like this, but she didn't know how else to stay. She hesitated. "Do you think we could, maybe talk again? Soon. Just us." I looked at her for a long moment. "If you want to talk, not perform, yes." She nodded quickly. "I do. I mean it." I let her go without another word. Sometimes forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a quiet space you create, just big enough for someone else to decide if they're ready to step into it. I didn't cry. I thought I might. I thought maybe, walking out of that room, the one that used to make me feel small, I'd crumble from the weight of everything I had to carry alone. But I didn't. Instead, I walked down the steps of that Park Avenue ballroom with steady feet and a lighter chest. I didn't feel like the forgotten one anymore. I felt like the one who had stayed true when no one was watching. Theo was already in the car, leaning back with the radio low and his phone in his hand. He looked up when I opened the door, eyes scanning my face. "You good?" I nodded. "Better than good." He grinned. "You didn't even tell me you were going to speak." I shrugged, settling into the seat. "Didn't know until I was standing there." "What changed?" I paused, then glanced out the window. I think, I was just ready to be seen. Not to be praised, not to prove anything. Just to exist out loud. Theo reached across the seat and squeezed my hand. No words, just that small gesture. And somehow, that was all I needed. Later that night, I lay in bed with my laptop open. I had over 50 emails, congratulatory messages, requests for interviews, a few old classmates. Suddenly remembering me, but one message stood out. It was from Theo, not my Theo. Theo Hood, the CEO of another startup I'd once advised quietly, when he was still pitching investors from his mom's living room. Subject: I saw the gala. I didn't know it was you. Body: if you ever have time, I'd still love to learn. You never asked for anything, but I owe you a lot. Even just an hour would mean the world. I smiled. It wasn't about being thanked. But sometimes, acknowledgement is its own kind of healing. I hit reply. Let's talk. Mondays are best. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't a comeback story. It was an arrival, one that didn't need trumpets or applause. I didn't need to sit at their table anymore. I had one of my own now, and the people at it had never needed me to shrink to feel tall. If you've ever been overlooked, if your silence has been mistaken for weakness, remember this: the room can't run without the foundation. Keep building in your corner. Let them talk. Let them toast. And when the time is right, walk in, not for revenge, but because you finally know your worth. Subscribe for more powerful stories that prove quiet doesn't mean forgotten, it means focused.